Hello and welcome to episode 177 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Sigmund Judge, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Mr. Devon Dundee, all the way out in Kansas City.
Yes, I'm reporting to you live from Kansas City, Sigmund, and I'm not the only one in town this week. We'll get to that just a little bit later. I'm actually here for a work conference, not for anything Apple TV related, unfortunately.
Sure.
And that is what I would say, isn't it? I just wanted to give a little warning to listeners. I am staying in a hotel room, so if you hear any weird hotel noise, don't worry. I'll be back in my regular recording station next week. But I did want to shout out, while I'm here, you and I had a conversation about Kansas City and what it's known for. And of course, one of the famous things about it is its barbecue. And so based on that conversation, I was inspired to venture out and try some Kansas City barbecue. I went to Arthur Bryant's, a great little spot in Kansas City, had some awesome food. And I'm really enjoying the city, really happy to be here and to be reporting in live, recording today with you, Sigmund.
Yeah, live from Ted Lasso country. You know, this week has been exciting for a number of reasons, not just, Ted Lasso officially getting back underway after some initial shoots in Surrey, which we reported on, but also from a theatrical point of view, because Christopher Nolan's next film is called The Odyssey. It's not out for a whole year, and yet all of the tickets for IMAX 70mm print screenings have sold out globally at this point, were made available a year ahead of time. I managed to get tickets for both the BFI IMAX screening and the Science Museum IMAX screening, which after the fact I'm told is actually a superior screen because they're using a double laser in the Science Museum. And it's very, very cool. I've been to a screening at the Science Museum before, and it's late at night, so the Science Museum's actually closed, and someone escorts you through the Science Museum to the IMAX theatre, which is incredible. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that. But the big deal about this film is that it's the first feature film to be filmed fully with IMAX cameras. And so it's a bit of an historical element to it, not just the story, the Odyssey, but also from a filmic point of view. But it also got me thinking, should we be doing this more? Should we be making more of an event out of the theatrical experience? And what could Apple and other streamers that are kind of in the in-between, what could they do with the idea of making the theatrical experience more of an event? And also, what could that do for awareness for their upcoming films and maybe even TV shows? One thing I'm constantly jealous of is when previous generations tell me about how they used to go to the cinema for a day and they used to watch all of the TV shows there on the largest screen with the best sound system because technology hadn't proliferated like it has today. And it made me think, this kind of goes back to an old conversation that we had. How amazing would it be to be able to watch the latest episode of Foundation on a Saturday matinee, for example, in a big screen as well?
Absolutely. We talk all the time about Apple and live experiences and creating that community around the Apple original releases. And I think that's something that the theatrical industry as a whole could lead into and make it a center point of the conversation in terms of getting more people in theaters, but doing it in a way that it's not just, okay, we show up to the box office, what's playing, let's go see this. Yeah, and I think that's always going to be an element of it, but making it more something that you build up to, I think could be something that would tap into a different market and get people excited about films in a way that, at least outside of super movie fans like you and me, people don't always get to be. So when you told me that you had ordered tickets a year out for the Odyssey, I was so impressed because my local theater, I still can't buy tickets to Fantastic Four for this weekend.
Oh, wow.
That's how delayed the schedule is. Yeah, the weekend schedule doesn't come out until Wednesday. Now, for I think like the Thursday night events, they do earlier things, but I think part of it is getting that experience once it's kind of developed for IMAX theaters, bigger cities, getting it out to the smaller theaters as well and getting everyone on board. I think that it needs to be something that can be taken part of, not just if you live near an IMAX or near a big city, but places that everyone could take advantage of. So, and maybe that's something more digital. Maybe it doesn't have to always be in person, but maybe ordering out in advance, you get some kind of special digital code or discount, or I don't even know, some kind of app experience on your phone to help you anticipate and count down. I think there's lots of ways this could go, but I like that, at least for this film, we're getting to anticipate it way earlier in advance than a lot of these films, and I would like to see this become a trend just like you would.
Hey, Devon, wallet app notifications, you know? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. However, one thing that I think is important, not for a Christopher Nolan film, but for Apple or whoever else, would be kind of going back to the Wolves release. Obviously, they pulled out of theatrical, but even when it came to streaming, there's so much noise, there's so many new releases continuously. You can't really keep up with them unless you do it professionally, I don't think, or you're an avid watcher. And so, you know, when I said, oh, there's a film with George Clooney and Brad Pitt out right now, no one had much of a clue. And Apple weren't really able to gauge how popular that film would be in theatres, because when screenings became available in the UK, for example, through Barclaycards, they got sponsorship with Everyman Cinemas. Every screening sold out instantly. Having a little bit of time to put your marker down, I think, is how you got to do it, because right now you don't know what films are going to be a success and what films aren't. It's so unpredictable post-COVID. And there's actually a really, really interesting conversation on the Town podcast from a couple of weeks ago with Jason Blum talking about Megan 2 and what went wrong, and was very, very quick to get on top of things and very honest. And I thought it was a really, really interesting conversation. So we'll no doubt link to that in the show notes. But this week, we've got lots to talk about. We're going to talk about Apple Games and the Apple Games app that's coming later this fall. We're also going to, of course, divulge all of the latest news from the world of Apple TV. But we start this week with our highlight on the return of Apple original comedy series Acapulco, as it welcomes us for its final season at Los Colinas. In Season 4, present-day Maximo works tirelessly to restore Los Colinas to its former glory before the grand reopening. In 1986, when a competitor claims the number one spot in the annual ranking of Acapulco's best hotels, young Maximo will do whatever it takes to get back on top and secure Las Colinas' future.
It was 1985, and Las Colinas was the spot.
What's up, Memo? Did you put a window in here?
I wanted to give the illusion of light. Don Pablo hired my sister, Dulce, to help with the party.
What if Don Pablo picks her instead of me? I can see through this innocent act of yours.
I suggest you back off.
More twists and turns were still to come.
This is created by Austin Winsberg, Eduardo Soneros, and Jason Schumann, inspired by Ken Marino's comedy film How to Be a Latin Lover, starring Enrique Arizon and executive producer Eugenio Derbez, with an ensemble cast including Fernando Corsa, Rafael Cabrean, Vanessa Bush, Camila Perez, Carlos Corona, Cord Overstreet, Regina Reynoso, Jessica Collins, and Regina Orozco. This season also features guest appearances from a favourite of mine, Kayla Monterosa-Meyer of the Studio and Curb Your Enthusiasm fame, alongside Omar Chaparro and Jack McBrayer. Going into this fourth season, we're both excited, and maybe we've got short-term memories, but I want to get you back a little bit, because your reaction to Season 3 was not what I expected at all. I think it's probably been the most critical you've been of a series on this show, which really threw me for a loop. But I got it. because there are certain elements to the story on season 3 that had us questioning quite a bit. But season 3 is behind us, that in-between phase of a story, and we're now into season 4. Things are a bit lighter this time.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think we're usually most critical of the things that we love, and Acapulco is a series that I have adored throughout its first 3 seasons, and I'm really enjoying the beginning of season 4 as we're diving into it. I think what struck me about season 3 the most was the descent of Maximo into the dark side. It felt so sudden and out of character. And part of it, I think, may have been for me the interweaving of the past and the present and catching up to where Maximo is in modern day. Some of those turns for present day Maximo were pretty dark. And I think that combined with what we were seeing him do, some of the decisions he was making at the end of season 3 to propel his own career at the cost of others, that really got me. And for me, what I was fearing was that the writers had kind of written themselves into a corner where they knew they had to get from the past Maximo to the current one who, while he's successful, he's more lonely, I think, probably than he would prefer, definitely disconnected from the Las Colinas community. And so they have to somehow bridge that gap, right? And I felt like maybe they were writing towards that in a way that, to me, it just didn't necessarily feel like it had been earned or the pacing was quite there. And so that, to me, was what really just felt off about season 3. Thankfully, season 4 takes a pretty sharp turn, I would say, with the return of the Maximo that we know and love. I think he realizes the mistakes that he made at the end of season 3. And while we still have to bridge that gap, that's something we're going to talk about in a little bit, is about things we're going to be looking forward to throughout this season. I feel like hopefully the ramp down now is going to be a little bit more smooth and make more sense than I think the sudden turn we saw. Because really, for me, Sigmund, I love this series so much, and I just want to spend as much time in the Acapulco that we know and love before it's gone, because we know it's going away at the end of the season. And my thing with season 3 was I just felt like I was losing it too early, and I wasn't ready. And so now I feel like I'm more prepared, and hopefully throughout this season, as we start to bridge that gap between past and present, it'll be a transition that'll feel earned and like it's the right way to move the story forward. That's what I'm hoping for.
And I think we get that early on, right? We begin this season with early conflict, really. The idea that there was a lack of limes for Las Colinas. The relationship between Maximo, who is now the operations manager, and one of his suppliers, Don Chavez. This is all whilst staff are concocting lime-heavy drinks, and Kayla Monterosa Mayer's character actually dog naps the dog of the lime farmers, only for the pet to go missing. So it's fast-moving, there's conflict, and there's stakes within the story. There's also a continuation of the narrative around young Maximo as he becomes this manager, and he's still learning about what real strength is and about the way in which he needs to kind of make a road for himself with his relationships with his co-workers as cuts are made throughout the resort. And he has to tackle all of this whilst also adapting to this role. And then, you know, amongst that, you've still got the fun. I mean, of course, the singers by the pool have a sharp exit, but the season does give us, in lieu of that, some expansive music numbers, with a superb number kicking off the second episode in this week's 2-episode season premiere. But beyond the music, Devon, I think, you know, and I agree with you very much, this is a show that I've really enjoyed throughout the seasons. Colourful characters, there's a feeling like you're on holiday when you're watching this for the half hour, unless you're binging and then, you know, you're really spoiled. But I think what makes this show so special is that it's full of teachable moments, and they focus on kindness, on fairness, and they mix it with laughter, good music, a real colourful cinematic landscape, I would say, for television as well. The pinks. I was looking at some of the set design thinking, how long did that take to just like get perfect, and how many times did they have to repaint those walls during the course of shooting? I may have even learnt a little bit of Spanish along the way, Devon, but don't test me on that. How about you? What's made Acapulco special for you?
I think everything that you mentioned definitely goes into it, but especially talking about the lessons learned along the way, I think what ties into that is the earnestness of the series and the characters on it. It's a show where people wear their hearts on their sleeves and they're rewarded for it because they're met with compassion and grace and people who want to work things out. You know, everyone goes through their squabbles, they have their different motivations and things they're trying to do, but at the end of the day, they are a community at Las Colinas, and they do come together and support one another and celebrate one another when they accomplish things and mourn with one another when they're going through difficulties. And so I think that just that completely non-cynical approach to relationships and to community, I think there's something so special about that. And I love the way that the characters speak to each other. And of course, there's always little subplots where people are keeping secrets or feel a certain way but feel like they can't say it. But ultimately, to me, I think the biggest lesson of this series is about honesty and, you know, saying what you want and reaching out for support, working through things with other people. I think a lot of the issues, especially that Maximo gets into, is when he tries to do things on his own. And that's when he starts to get into trouble. So I love just the earnestness of it and the honesty of the whole thing. Then, of course, there's just the fantasy of it all. You do feel like you're on vacation when you're watching Acapulco. But to me, it's not just the fantasy of like super rich people on a luxurious vacation, because Las Colinas isn't just a special place for the guests. It's a special place for the staff as well. And the magic of it comes from them not breaking their backs and, you know, just completely giving up everything of themselves to make it a good stay for these people, but it's the care they take and the desire they have to make it a special experience for people. And of course, it's nostalgic because it's Maximo looking back, and it's the 80s, and you got the colors and everything about it. It just feels, like I said, like a fantasy in a way that I so enjoy going to. And it makes me feel lighter every week coming away from it, because I just feel like the world I've come out of is just one that I love to be in. And I think that contributes to a tone that is just so enjoyable and light and easy to take in. And we need that in our lives. You know, we need something that's going to lift us up in addition to the gritty and all that stuff too. We need both, but Acapulco definitely reflects the lighter side, not only in just the way it makes you feel, but also in the way that it looks. And then I do want to re-emphasize the music, because I think the music of the series really makes it special. All the Spanish covers of 80s pop songs that we've seen throughout the series, I think those are awesome. Whoever came up with that idea was just a genius, because you know the song. You don't understand the words necessarily that they're singing, but you can pick up on the song immediately, and that's actually a really fun way to re-experience a song that you know. But to hear someone perform it in that way, I think that's a ton of fun, and I love that they're leaning more and more into it this season. I don't know to what extent we're going to be getting more and more musical numbers, but I loved the second episode where they incorporated music into the plot, and I just love that so much. And I love that the creators of the show recognize that that's such an important element and are leaning into it as we're getting ready to leave Las Colinas, because I'll take as much of that music as I can.
I couldn't agree more. I think the biggest thing is, because this show has continuously gone back between two timelines, I think the biggest takeaway from the first 3 seasons going into this 4th season has been that you never stop learning. And there's no shame in not knowing everything and learning from people. And sometimes you have to learn the same lesson 2 or 3 times, and sometimes you just don't, and that's okay. But there are elements to this show that we do want to see wrapped up in this 4th season. I think on both sides of the timeline, right? Where do we want to start with Maximo?
I think what's so interesting about the structure of the show, which is another important element of it, it gives you bits and pieces of Maximo's future and the other people that he knows, but you never get the full story, and they're still building towards that, because the whole thing is actually framed as Maximo telling the story to his nephew and other people who he drags into the story throughout his travels. But I love that structure. I love the way it builds mystery, but it also gives you some release as you meet some of the people later on in life and see where they're at. So what's interesting to me is that a lot of the characters we know and love, we already know where they end up. Memo, his future is pretty much set because we see his children and the life that they're living together. And, it's not really a question about how things are going to go, although it is cool getting to go back and see the beginning of his family as they're forming together. I think that's cool. But I think really most of the mystery still remains around Maximo, especially, what happened to create that rift between him and Las Colinas. That's something that we're still going to have to get to because apparently what happened at the end of season 3 was not the final straw. And so I think that's going to be interesting to see how he leaves the hotel. Then, of course, how he becomes so wealthy in the end, because where we meet him in the future or in the current timeline is very different from where we leave him back in the 1980s. And of course, we got to find out what happens with Maximo and Julia. We know that they are working together on reopening Las Colinas, but we don't know exactly what the dynamic is in their relationship and whether they can reunite that spark or if she's even really interested in that all those years later. And then for me, I think actually the question that has become more interesting as we're going into the 4th season is the future of Las Colinas itself, because we know the ups and downs that it's been through. We know the magic of the hotel in the 1980s, but we also know that it loses some elements of that between that timeline and the present. But a big push for Maximo in the current timeline throughout this final season is going to be trying to restore it to that former glory and what exactly that looks like. And so I think that's our opportunity, not only for Maximo and his relationships, but also for him to possibly restore that world that was lost. And I'm really interested to see how that plays out. And I think that's going to be a really interesting loose end that gets tied up throughout this 4th season as well.
Acapulco kicks off its 10-episode final season with a 2-episode premiere today on Apple TV Plus across all of your screens. And who knows, this may be the perfect accompaniment to some in-flight entertainment whilst you make your way to your own Las Colinas this summer. But something that honestly could not come soon enough, and most of us are going to have to wait until next summer unless they're on the developer betas or the Apple public beta program that's going live very, very soon. A new app, and I'm not even sure if I could say a new idea, but a reversion back to an old idea that works so well, and I'm so happy to see it back. And that is Apple Games and Game Center being front and center again for, the mobile casual gaming market, not hidden somewhere in the settings, which was always a little bit weird. And then once Apple Arcade was introduced in 2019, slowly but surely we'd get pop-ups that would bring us into the Game Center fold, but there was still never really a central home for it all. History throughout all of the different games and achievements, and even, for the competitive amongst us, a scoreboard amongst you and all of your friends on Game Center. So, being the ultra competitive person, I'm very, very excited about this coming back into the fold. We've both had a little bit of hands-on, and I think it's now safe for us to start talking about the Apple Games app. By no means is this the finished and final piece that we're talking about, but there's some really interesting concepts, and I think we've both had some fun hands-on with it so far.
Yeah, it's actually in really great shape in the betas so far. I think Apple has certainly cast the vision of what they want it to be. They put out a whole separate press release at WWDC about the Games app and about what it's supposed to be and what it's going to do. And so while there are certain elements that aren't quite activated yet, like those challenges, they're going to require, third-party adoption in the fall once it's all publicly available. I think we do have a pretty good idea of what to expect from the Games app, and I personally have been really enjoying it. So just as a quick breakdown of what the Games app is, it's Apple's new destination for all things gaming on iPhone, iPad, and Mac. And it's a whole dedicated app on your home screen. It's got its own icon. You can place it where you want it. And I think it's very cool that it's been promoted that far to a full-on app. And it features 4 different tabs: Home, Arcade, Play Together, and Library. Home starts with a featured carousel of games and editorial stories. Includes a continue playing row to relaunch recently played games. Stop me if you've heard about a continue row segment, one that we talk about quite often, but it's cool to have one for games as well. There's a Friends Are Playing section to discover games from Game Center friends, an Apple Arcade Games for You section that, for subscribers, highlights titles on the service that Apple thinks you might enjoy, and it also has charts for top paid, free, and arcade games, as well as curated collections and categories. So that's all in the Home tab. There's a lot going on there, a lot to explore, not only of games that you're playing and your friends are playing, but also games to discover. There is a dedicated arcade tab with collections and suggestions for arcade subscribers to find new games to play alone and with their friends. Then there's a Play Together tab with suggestions of games you can play with others, a section highlighting games your friends are playing, as well as their achievements. So even if you're not playing a game, you can see what they're playing and how they're doing in it and maybe jump in with them. And each friend that you're friends with in Game Center has a profile with links to contact them and invite them to play multiplayer games with you or compete in new score and time-based challenges in single-player games. This is a new addition that Apple's going to offer to game developers in the fall, where even games that don't have multiplayer elements, you can still compete against each other in a single-player game, just trying to complete it the fastest or the best, and that's going to be a cool addition as well. Then the library, this is a fun one. It's a list of every game you've downloaded from the App Store in the past, as well as your achievements. I don't know about you, Sigmund. My list was very long. A lot of things in there I did not recognize and things I hadn't seen in quite some time. But I did scroll all the way to the bottom, just out of curiosity to see, okay, what was my oldest game in my Apple account?
Sure.
And it turned out to be 15 years ago. I guess when I first got my iPhone, I downloaded Checkers. And that was my first game. Did you scroll back and check out yours?
I did. On your say-so, I checked it out. And the first achievement that I ever got in Game Center was 14 years ago. So a while back. But it was Tagline Takedown, which is a game that, honestly, I remember quite well now. You'd get a tagline for a film, and you'd have to match it with the options that were below it. So a little bit like Song Pop in that sense. And honestly, that in-between for a game like Seen It, that I really wish was a thing still, that was on Xbox, and it was like a live game show that had movie clips and stuff. We'll get there in a minute, because I do think what we've experienced so far isn't the end goal for where this Games app could go. Do you think there's any confusion that could be added here? Because not that long ago, I had a conversation with my mum, and she couldn't work out what was available in Apple Arcade and what was in the App Store. And she was telling me, oh, well, Apple Arcade games like prompt you for in-app purchases as well. And I was like, no. That's definitely not how that works. And so there's confusion there, I think, like, for the mainstream still. Can Apple games bring everything together and make it explicitly so that people understand what they can expect from software titles on the service and software titles available in the App Store?
I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. A few years ago, Apple added a dedicated Games tab to the App Store, which I think was an attempt to do something similar, but I feel like a tab in the App Store is still not quite enough space to convey all the information that people need to know about games. And so the Games app, it does include a lot of rich information about the games that it's listing, and it does delineate between this one's free, this one costs, this one has in-app purchases. And so right at the top of an app's listing, you can install the game, but you'll also see what it's going to cost and if it's going to be prompting you for in-app purchases. So people who are trying to avoid those things, I think they're going to have better tools to try to avoid that. Of course, Apple Arcade is sprinkled throughout it. It has its own tab, but there's also suggestions for arcade throughout in different areas. And so I think that Apple's trying to continue to make people aware of that. They're trying to appeal to subscribers with that subscriber edition and recommendations from the service there. Maybe with some editorial, they can communicate to people. It's such a selling point of arcade, but it is still so hard for people to understand. I think it's actually harder for people to believe that you can get a game on the App Store that's not going to either force ads or in-app purchases on you. But that is the promise of Apple Arcade, right? And so they're going to have to continue to push that truth out there because it is so important for people to understand. But I do feel like the Games app, at least my navigation of it, my understanding of it, trying to view it as someone who doesn't know all the ins and outs of the App Store and the services, I feel like Apple's doing a better job here than ever before of communicating what you can expect and what you're getting yourself into, which I definitely appreciate.
Yeah, I'm excited for it because, as I say, I think we've been talking for years when we have talked about games, which I know is a rarity on here. Games are becoming more and more important to Apple's ecosystem. We're seeing that with some of the PC and console game conversions that are coming over to Mac. Just last week with Cyberpunk. Whilst we're not there yet, I'm really happy to see everything kind of getting centralized again. And maybe there is a way in which Apple can compete with the likes of Steam, with the likes of Microsoft and Sony. When you look at what they were doing in terms of, I think they were the originals for Game Center achievements and that kind of thing. But achievements and that concept, I think, work really, really well for our mobile devices and for casual games as well. So I'm really, really happy to see this coming back and being front and center. As I said, I'm very competitive, and it'll be interesting to see what our gamer scores are like in comparison to one another. Is this something that you can see yourself just like firing up rather than doom scrolling just to see what someone else is playing and see what that challenge is or see what that score is to beat? Because whilst maybe not as productive, it's a lot more fun.
Absolutely. I think discoverability is going to be a huge aspect of this app for me, especially because I struggle. I'm not a huge gamer. I think a lot of my gaming is very casual. And so I think I trust other people better to make suggestions to me, people in my life who play more games. And so even just looking at the games that friends are playing on Game Center has been helpful for me to find what's out there, what people are into, and also an opportunity. It's got that built-in social aspect. You can already have a conversation with someone about it and compete with them immediately. And so I think that aspect of it is very cool. I think it's going to be great for that social discoverability, as well as some of the discoverability of suggestions and charts and things that we've seen before. But I think that social side of it's going to work really well. The way I'm already using it, and actually am using it every day, which is more than I expected to be using the Games app, actually, is it's my daily puzzle game launcher in the morning. I love to start my day with certain puzzles. And so they're all linked up right there in the Games app, except for Wordle. Wordle doesn't have an app. And so I have to find separately. But the other games that I play, my Sudoku, my crossword, my Wheel of Fortune, I'm still doing daily Wheel of Fortune, Sigmund. I've kept my streak alive. And all of those are linked in the Games app. And so rather than having to find those individually or give them spots on my home screen or in Control Center, I can just use the Games app as that launcher. And so it's actually encouraged me to be in the Games app more, where I can discover things. And it's become a part of my daily workflow already, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I hadn't really even thought of the Games app as like the app library that's specific to games on your home screen, which is very, very cool. Have you already trained yourself in terms of to go to the Games app, or are you getting notifications? Like, is this a manual or is this a prompted experience?
I'm doing it manually. Yeah, instead of what I used to have was a section in my Control Center to launch those games, and I did a huge clearing out of my Control Center. I got overwhelmed. I had too much going on in there. I needed to clean it up. And so I deleted that, and I haven't really had a good system for launching them the past couple of months. And so this gave me that opportunity again. So yeah, I just remember to open the Games app every morning. It's a proactive thing for me, and it's been great. It's a really great hub for that sort of thing, even for someone who's super casual like me. And I think it can scale up to people who play way more games and play way more often. It's even navigable with a controller. So if you're already like in game mode, ready to go, you can navigate the app with your controller, launch the game, and go straight into it. So I think it's actually really good in terms of appealing to a wide array of gamers as well. I guess I fall into that category on on the more lower end, but I'm using it every day and loving it for sure.
One element that you talked about in terms of the social element, I think we're the champions of SharePlay, really. When SharePlay was announced, everyone was like, oh, this is, a lockdown feature. And we always saw it as the future to something that never quite came. And there have been iterations across the different media elements to Apple's ecosystem and SharePlay, with a lot of third parties adopting when it comes to media playback. With games, there is an element to this as well, right? In terms of it ties in with iMessage, it can tie in with SharePlay sessions and video and audio calls to a degree. But this is still not a live service, so to speak. This is very much set on the foundations of what came before, but there wasn't a home for, right? So when you went into an app before, you could get notifications for that particular game, or you might get a notification on a game that someone's just played and they've beat your score in a different game, and you can tap on it and it will take you straight to that game. There isn't a live kind of structure to this, like a games console, for example, where it would say, right now, someone's playing Cyberpunk 2097 or the new Assassin's Creed game, or someone's playing EAFC or Sneaky Sasquatch or one of the What the Golf games. That's what I want to see. Do you think we get that? If so, how quickly? And do you think that might tie in with a platform that currently isn't on the list of platforms that have been announced? If we get a new Apple TV, I'd imagine Apple TV is going to join that list of compatible platforms.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that the Apple TV is not included in this initial rollout of the Games app, but it could actually be a hardware thing. It may require, new hardware or just come alongside the announcement of new hardware, which we've heard rumored could be this fall. And I would love to see that live element of it come with that new hardware, or at the very least, maybe next year you're into the Games app as sort of an additional service that Apple's offering. Maybe the next round of it is tying those things together. All the elements are right there in place. It just needs to go from that very proactive app where you have to go in and find people and challenge them to a little bit more of an immersive or a reactive experience where when you start a game, it pings your friends list and says, hey, do you want to play with so-and-so? I personally need that because it's just not the way my brain works. I don't think I've got 30 minutes to spend before my next appointment or whatever. I'm going to sit down and play a game and I'm going to invite so-and-so. That's just not my processing. But if I had some downtime and I had a notification that, hey, Sigmund is playing Sneaky Sasquatch. Do you want to jump in and play together? Or, whatever it is, I think that would be really helpful for me just to prompt me and get me going in that direction. I think that could be helpful for a lot of people. So so much of it is already there with SharePlay and iMessage and the contacts, and it all looks so good. We just need that one final step, and I hope it does come. And my fingers would be crossed that it comes alongside the Apple TV rollout, potentially with new hardware this fall. That's my optimistic wish anyway.
For a while, I had the idea of maybe, adding friends for gaming sessions to iCal. But then, although you can have separate calendars and separate feeds, it's weird kind of treating your social time and your fun time like work time, and having it scheduled next to your hospital appointments and whatnot. But the Invites app could fit the bill, I think, and be that in between.
Yeah, the Invites app integrates with every other layer of Apple software and services, and it's included with iCloud Plus, so it's an upsell as well. So you could almost make it, tying that together, you could make it a paid service in a way without necessarily having to introduce a whole new paid service or tie it to Arcade. I like that. They should definitely do that.
Who knows? Who knows, Devon? Look, we're going to be talking more about the Games app later down the line, but right now, Apple Games is available via both Apple Developer Beta and Apple Public Beta programs, with a wide launch coming this fall to iOS 26, iPadOS 26, and macOS Tahoe, and who knows what else.
I think we know what we're hoping for, Sigmund. Let's keep the gaming chat going because Apple Arcade is holding a special crossover event this month featuring none other than SpongeBob SquarePants himself. Characters and locations from the series will be featured in both Snake I.O. Plus and Crossy Road Castle, and SpongeBob Patty Pursuit is gaining a new Endless mode. Other crossovers this summer include appearances from Bluey in Fruit Ninja Classic Plus and Paddington the Bear in Crayola Create and Play Plus. I love these crossovers. This is a fun way to create a little bit of an identity within Apple Arcade, promote other games within the service to people who are enjoying different ones, and I think that's a really cool way of doing it, and using these characters that people know and love is awesome. We're big Bluey fans in our household, Sigmund, so that definitely appeals to us. Not quite to the SpongeBob age yet, but it won't be long. Of course, Apple does offer the Apple Sports app, and while it doesn't yet include esports, that very well could come in a future update. But this week we did receive version 3.1 of the app with a handful of new features, including support for the FA Community Shield match between Crystal Palace and Liverpool on August 10th. The app is now available in Mexico as well and features more real-time player stats displayed in box scores. So it's cool to see the app continue to grow and develop and even expand further across the world.
Yeah, very, very much looking forward to what else is going to be in store, because it seems like every other week we're talking about additions. But this summer is, according to Infuse, the summer of love. And on Apple TV, as well as iOS, macOS, and iPadOS, Infuse 8.2 has released. And it is quite the release, Devon. Infuse 8.2 includes a number of abilities, including the ability to use separate profiles, now available on Apple TV, with each family member able to enjoy personalized setup, complete with custom home screen layouts, network shares, watched history, ratings, parental controls, and the integration of their own personal Tracked accounts, which is amazing. Tracked is an app that I use on Apple TV, and then because of the way it links, all of that data also flows through to SQL, which is my favorite tracking app of all. But this is all very, very cool. In terms of ratings, Metacritic ratings have also been added to the different scores when you go onto a film or a TV show's page. And when it comes to browsing and playing files downloaded from iCloud, Infuse now also supports streaming directly from iCloud, allowing you to play videos without using local storage on your device. Of course, the option to download files for offline playback is still available, and Apple currently, whilst we know they do not allow browsing iCloud Drive files on Apple TV, Infuse have found a way of bringing direct links to iCloud files, and they can be added in the links section in Infuse, and these links will be accessible then on other devices, including Apple TV. So a really, really cool workaround, although I will say I've been using Infuse with some Blu-ray rips of my own personal media. And the other day I had a look at the bitrate and was told, like, if I was to continue at this bitrate, I'd be using 27 gigabytes bandwidth for this particular film. It was Christopher Nolan's Tenet, completely uncompressed. So you're going to really need a lot of iCloud storage space to make the most use of this, but very cool either way. And then on top of all of that, Devon, this is the thing that I think we're excited about as well. I know we keep alluding to the fall, and we're really, really hopeful that there will be new hardware, but Infuse have announced an expanded set of AI upscaling features that are now available in 8.2, including limited support for current Apple TV 4K models, Infuse leverages Apple's hardware to deliver a sharper, clearer image when playing lower resolution videos on larger screens. They note that capabilities vary depending on the device, with the full suite of features requiring an A16 chip or newer. As a result, Apple TV users can expect even greater improvements with the next generation model potentially arriving as soon as this year. I don't know if Infuse is a program that you use much. It's since I got my NAS, it's an app that I pretty much live in now, beyond live TV and, some apps that proliferate the Apple TV app for me. Of course, we're still waiting on the Vision OS app. I think is expected now in the fall.
Well, I've heard you sing the praises of Infuse, Sigmund, and while I haven't taken the deep dive yet, these features definitely are exciting and appealing to me. The tracked integration, I think, is what really appeals to me as well, because like you, I'm a SQL user, and having that stuff automatically tracked, I think would be incredible. And I love that Infuse are getting on board with the profile switching on Apple TV, being able to link that to your Infuse account via iCloud. And then also they mention the ability with tvOS 26 to make the profile switcher the default view on the Apple TV when you turn it on. And so I just love the energy that they're bringing to this. I love the way that they're leading into Apple TV rumors to say, hey, we're excited about this too, and we can't wait to bring features to it. I think the energy here, the way they're investing in the platform is amazing. And I want to applaud them for this release for sure.
I cannot wait to see what else they bring. Obviously, we had the rumor of, audio pass-through. There's been some discussion on the Infuse forums with regard to that as well. And there's been no official word since the early rumors last month. So who knows? Maybe they know more than they're letting on. In other apps, Peacock is the latest streaming service to roll out price increases, adding $3 to the monthly cost of both of its streaming tiers. Peacock Premium, the ad-supported tier, now costs $10.99 per month, surpassing the ad-supported tiers of Netflix, HBO Max, Disney+, Hulu, and Paramount+, and Peacock Premium Plus now costs $16.99 per month. Personally, it's a service that I get the most value from as both an EPL fan and wrestling as well, along with a number of Peacock originals like Poker Face. But it's another increase, and I just wonder, how far are you able to push that? And does it even make any sense given what we know about, ad-supported tiers and how that actually helps out companies like Universal?
Yeah, it's an interesting decision. I think it's just a continuing trend in the streaming world. And, the note that Peacock now costs more than the base tiers of other services, I don't know that that's such an indication of Peacock as much as the way that the streaming world is moving. I have to imagine we're going to see those other services probably matching or exceeding those prices before long. Unfortunately, it's just the way it works. These companies are still trying to move towards profitability with streaming. Netflix has gotten there, Disney has gotten there recently, but it was a struggle to get there right. And these other services are still trying to get there, and price increases, ads, it's all a part of it. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I'm going to be paying for my Peacock subscription going forward because they're the home of Law & Order, and they've also got a great comedy backlog library as well. So it's going to be sticking around in my house despite the price increase, and I anticipate we'll probably see more of these before too long, unfortunately.
Well, one of the other homes of comedy is, of course, Apple TV+, and one of our favourite comedies is returning very, very quickly. Of course, I'm talking about our trailer talk, and that is Platonic, with its second season. Season 2 picks up with everyone's favourite pair of best friends, Sylvia and Will, as they contend with new midlife hurdles, including work, weddings, and partners in crises, with the duo trying their best to be each other's rock. But sometimes rocks break things.
How are we going to move this bad boy?
You get the front, I'll get the back.
That's what she said.
Booyah. Yeah! Ah! You should have seen how far you flew. If you have a Ring camera or something, you could go viral. Yeah!
Here you're turning Will into a golfer.
Yeah, he's taking lessons from my dad.
You got this, son. I know you do.
Co-created, directed, and co-written by Nick Stoller and Francesca Del Banco, starring and executive produced by Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, who have just amazing on-screen chemistry, and also starring Luke McFarlane and Carla Gallo, with this season's guest stars including Aidy Bryant, Carl Mooney, Beck Bennett, and Milo Manheim. Devon, I'm just going to say it off the bat, I have the banana phone case winging its way to me already. I'm not sure about some of the shirts from Will this season, although I'm glad he's kind of moved away from the bleached blonde haircut, which at one point I did think of emanating and then realized that I probably shouldn't, and I didn't. But this is a really, really interesting area that's being teased between the two this season, with Will once again getting into a new relationship, a more adult relationship this time, compared to the cringe-worthiness of last season. But cringe all the same.
Oh, very much cringe, Sigmund. I have to say, I could have done without rewatching the golf scene from the teaser in the trailer, but that's just the humor of the show, right? That's what they do. And it's such a cool concept for a series, recognizing that relationships, friendships in adulthood are hard, and that sometimes reconnecting with people from your past can have really interesting effects on your life. I think this season, the thing that I'm looking forward to the most is the intentionality that especially Sylvia is bringing to the relationship. She's recognizing that, okay, the last time Will got into a serious long-term relationship, that's what messed up our friendship. That's what separated us. And then that's what made us spend so much time apart. So she's trying to find a way to be at least accommodating, I think, of Will's new partner, and trying to make sure that their friendship is building each other up rather than pushing each other back towards their juvenile days and the antics, a lot of what that we saw playing out in season 1.
I was surprised at how kind of central the focus was on just the two this time, compared to last season where other characters were being introduced and getting more screen time and more of a story. It felt like the first season was becoming more of an ensemble show, like a Loot, for example. I don't see that from this teaser. Despite everything and my excitement, that's the one thing I was like, oh, okay. Is it more of the same? Obviously, we'll have to wait and see. But that was my take from the trailer.
Well, I will say that, as you said, the chemistry between the two leads is undeniable. And so I can understand why, at least in the promotion of the series, why they would lean into that. But I do hope for some more fun group scenes and some great side characters throughout the second season as well. So I'm hopeful for it, and I'm excited to dive back into the world of Platonic. Of course, Season 2 Platonic debuts August 6th on Apple TV+, with the first 2 of 10 episodes. We also got a trailer this week for kids and family animated series Stillwater, which returns for Season 4 on August 1st. And we got some exciting release news for another animated series for kids and families. That is stop-motion series Shape Island, which will return for a second season August 29th on Apple TV+. Based on the book series from Mac Barnett and John Klassen, the series stars Yvette Nicole Brown, Harvey Guillen, Scott Adsit, and Gideon Adlon. It takes place on a charming island and invites viewers to join Serious Square, Intrepid Circle, and Tricky Triangle as they dig up some fun, search for answers, and build on their friendship, all while learning how to navigate each other's differences and showing kids that friendship can take many shapes. I know Shape Island, the first season, was a really unique and great addition to the kids and family section of Apple TV+. I'm excited that it's returning for a second season with, of course, the original cast returning. You'd love to see that.
Apple original film The Lost Bus will make its world premiere at a special presentation at this year's Toronto International Film Festival, which will be held from September 4th through the 14th. This film, of course, is from famed director Paul Greengrass and stars Matthew McConaughey and America Ferrera as a bus driver and a teacher trying to navigate a bus of school children through a wildfire. And it's produced by Jamie Lee Curtis. So I am really, really interested in this. I'm excited for this. And Seeing that there's a September premiere, I'm imagining we'll see its streaming debut within the month on Apple TV Plus, and maybe a few other select screenings at maybe New York Film Festival or maybe even London Film Festival. We don't know from either of those. They come slightly after TIFF. Yeah, exciting stuff. But I want to get back to comedy a moment, Devon. This caught us unawares just earlier today, as we're recording. Loot will return for its third season on October 15th on Apple TV Plus. Maybe, Devon, we have the possibility here of not only a lost bus, but a lost plane on Apple TV Plus in October.
Yeah, I mean, with the way that Loot Season 2 ended, we have no idea where that plane ended up, but it's going to be a fun fall on Apple TV Plus for sure.
On a slightly more somber note, a documentary that I got to see just a few weeks ago early at Sheffield Doc Fest in the UK has now an official release date on Apple TV Plus through Apple Original Films, and that is Apple Original documentary Come See Me in the Good Light, which will premiere Friday, November 14th on Apple TV Plus. This is the documentary from director Ryan White and producer Tig Notaro, with the Sundance Film Festival favourite award-winning film being a poignant and unexpectedly funny love story about poets Andrea Gibson and Megan Farley facing an incurable cancer diagnosis with joy, wit, and an unshakable partnership. Through laughter and unwavering love, they transform pain into purpose and mortality into a moving celebration of resilience. Now, the news for this release unfortunately follows the sad news of Andrea Gibson's passing last Monday at the age of 49. Interestingly about this documentary, Andrea Gibson wasn't expecting to see this documentary ever. It was completed faster than they'd ever imagined it would be. And it's a really, really special film. It's nice knowing that Andrea got to experience the film complete. And it's a very, very, very funny film. But very, very heartfelt. And it introduced me to their poetry, which I hadn't been exposed to before then. And yeah, it's a truly exceptional piece. So I can't wait for everyone to check this out. It's the second time I'm talking about it, Devon. November 14th on Apple TV Plus, and I'm hoping on some select screens as well, so fans can gather and celebrate Andrea Gibson and their work.
Most certainly. In production news this week, Shrinking Season 3 has wrapped, and as we hinted at the top of the episode, Ted Lasso has begun filming in Kansas City this week, following shoots in Surrey, England. Apple released a short video and a photo of the cast together in a barbecue joint, and I think the most exciting news out of this was the confirmation that Juno Temple is in fact returning. That was the one cast member who was it was in negotiations last we heard it. I don't know that it was really a question whether she'd return, but it's great to see her and the rest of the cast together in that little booth with Ted, and can't wait to see what they do with Ted Lasso Season 4.
Yeah, neither can I. I am keeping my beady eyes on the Cult of Lasso social media pages. They seem to be well up to date with everything going on. A great page. So if you're wanting to know the latest, that's the place to go.
Season 2 of German language series Where's Wanda will begin filming next month. After the way that season ended, I'm so excited to know it's carrying on and moving through the production pipeline. I'm excited to see where they go with that. And I know, Sigmund, you can't wait to see it, but the second season of The Studio is scheduled to begin filming this December.
In development now, back in April, we shared the news that Apple had landed a series adaptation of Philip Kerr's Berlin Noir book series from Conclave's writer Peter Strahan and executive producers Tom Hanks and Gary Goetzman. Well, Apple have now officially announced the series, along with news that Slow Horses star Jack Lowden will play the lead role, with Tom Shanklin directing the show, which follows Detective Bernie Gunther as he investigates a serial killer in 1928 Berlin.
Some casting news that I am over the moon about, Sigmund. Jake Johnson, who I love from New Girl and various other hilarious things that he's done. He's going to star opposite Tatiana Maslany in Apple Original comedic thriller series Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed from creator and showrunner David J. Rosen. Developed by Simon Kinberg and Audrey Chon under their first look deal with Apple, the series follows Paula, played by Maslany, a newly divorced mom who falls down a dangerous rabbit hole of blackmail, murder, and youth soccer, and Johnson will play Paula's ex-husband, Carl. This was another series that we heard about through the outlets, but Apple has now officially announced it, and the new news that we had not heard about was Jake Johnson's involvement as well, which, I love his sense of humor. I think he's gonna do great at this, and that combo, I think, makes for a great series.
I love the projects that Jake Johnson attaches himself to. Do you remember that weird Peacock original film that I think was in your top 10 the other year? I don't think I've really seen much from him since then.
Yeah, that was a great film about the guy who was in the game show where he couldn't be alone. He was also in Safety Not Guaranteed, which was like a weird time travel adjacent film based on real events. He does some really good work both in front of and behind the camera. He's a voice that I love to hear from. And yeah, I'm happy that he's getting linked up with Apple in an Apple Original series. Now, when the series does come out, some of us may be experiencing it actually in a whole new way. Of course, most of us are used to watching Apple Originals in the Apple TV app. Last year, Apple partnered with Amazon to release Apple TV Plus through Amazon Prime Video, and now Apple is linking up with DirecTV for a similar distribution deal. DirecTV customers can add Apple TV Plus to their existing satellite or internet TV plans for $10 a month, and access the service on their DirecTV Gemini device or any other platform where the service is available. And if you're already an existing Apple TV Plus customer, but you also use DirecTV for your satellite TV, you can actually link those two accounts, get those bills on one bill, and simplify things just a little bit. So it's cool to see Apple continuing to expand the reach of Apple TV Plus, trying to find new ways to reach people. And I feel like people with the traditional set-top boxes, satellite connectivity, maybe even in areas where internet isn't quite as pervasive or high speed that you want to be streaming things that way, they could still get their satellite dishes and access Apple TV Plus that way, which I think is very cool. And then we're going to talk more about sports, Sigmund. So many sports rumors swirling around, and this is another one from the world of baseball. In an interview with CNBC, Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred confirmed that Apple is one of the companies that made a bid to broadcast Sunday Night Baseball starting next year. Now, NBC and ESPN have also made bids for the package, which currently resides at ESPN with a price tag of $550 million per year. And the commissioner told CNBC that he plans to make a deal within the month, though the rights may go to more than one bidder, which I think is an interesting way of putting that. The commissioner, it seems like he likes to talk about these deals when they come up and talk about how many people want to carry MLB. You know, it's a point of pride, which is great. I love the tease that it's kind of like American Idol or something like that. Like the winner will be revealed within the next month. Like they're going to roll out a pageant or something. But it's interesting to think that right now ESPN has the rights to those. Of course, Apple has Friday Night Baseball. Baseball's all split up across different distribution platforms, but it'd be interesting to see if maybe they do some kind of like hybrid streaming TV thing where Apple can stream it, but also it can be aired on broadcast TV in the US as well through a different partner. So we'll see how that goes, but apparently we're going to find out this month.
Talking of sports, let's start our Apple TV releases this week with some sports. Today sees the MOS All-Star Game on MOS Season Pass ahead of the Leagues Cup, which pits the Mexican teams with the American teams and Canadian teams. Very, very cool. Also today is a highlight, the 2-episode Season 4 premiere of Acapulco and the finale of Stick, which I cannot wait for, alongside a new episode of The Buccaneers. On Friday, we see things continuously heat up in Foundation, where it just seems like every faction just is running out of time. And talking of running out of time, Smoke goes from strength to strength. I think this is the show this year that is a slow burner, but it's one of those that if you stick with it, you are completely rewarded week in, week out. It's fantastic, fantastic television. A great follow-up to Blackbird for those that were fans of that. And of course, on Friday, we get back to sports with Friday Night Baseball returning. Philadelphia Phillies at New York Yankees at 7:05 p.m. Eastern, and Cleveland Guardians at Kansas City Royals starting at 8:10 p.m. Eastern. On Friday and Saturday, we get MLS Game Day on MLS Season Pass, and on Tuesday, MLS Leagues Cup begins. But that's not all we've got, Devon, because we've got some extras, as we always do.
Yes, we do. We've got the Season 3 recap of Acapulco to catch you up before diving into Season 4. We've got the Foundation Season 3 Art Blast over ArtStation Magazine, a deep dive into the art of Season 3, as well as a behind-the-scenes featurette Mind Meld with the cast of Foundation Season 3. For Murderbot, we've got the cast plays Bittersweet. And for the Buccaneers, we've got a set tour with Josie Tota and Aubrey Ebrig. Fun fact about Josie Tota, Sigmund, I'm actually getting a double dose of her right now because in my Glee rewatch, she was in the final season of Glee just for like 6 or 7 episodes when she was 13 years old. So I'm getting some of Josie Tota in Glee and in the Buccaneers. It's a lot of fun.
Very, very cool. And mixed in with the music in Acapulco, which is kind of Glee-like in some ways in this premiere week. I feel like this week of TV is the perfect week for you.
Exactly.
One thing that doesn't have any musical highlights this week are my TV app highlights. And they begin with Dangerous Animals on PVOD. This is a thriller horror about a savvy and free-spirited surfer who's abducted by a shark-obsessed serial killer on his boat, where she's held captive and she must figure out how to escape before he carries out a ritualistic feeding to the sharks below. And this is pretty unhinged, looks like a lot of fun. I saw the trailer for this in theatres. I missed it on the big screen, so I'm really looking forward to checking this one out. Then, completely different, The Materialists. This is one of those A24 films that takes forever to come out over here in the UK. It's coming to theatres very soon, but this week it's available on PVOD. It's the latest from director Celine Song, and stars a cast including Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, Pedro Pascal, because he's in everything these days, alongside Zoe Winters, Marine Island, Dasha Nekrovsova, and Louisa Jackson. And it's about a young, ambitious New York City matchmaker who finds herself torn between the perfect match and her imperfect ex. So very much a rom-com of sorts. I'm interested in this because I'm a big fan of what Celine Song has brought to the table so far. I've heard mixed things about this, but I think this is right up my alley. And then, again, I'm going everywhere this week, Devon, because my other highlight is a series highlight, South Park, with its 27th season set to kick off after what has been a convoluted and delayed rollout, as the series has been stuck in legal limbo due to the Paramount Plus and Skydance merger, which appears to be having a few casualties along the way this week, including Stephen Colbert. I love the animation, I always have. I've dipped in and out of this series from a very, very young age. I love some of the takes that the show has, and they're not afraid to push the envelope. I realised just this past week that all of the series has been pulled from Paramount Plus. I think HBO Max as well has been pulled, and there's literally nowhere that you can watch the series, but you can access the specials on Paramount Plus right now. So season 27 is supposed to kick off on Wednesday on Paramount Plus, but the truth is we don't know. The only way may be if you've got a cable subscription and you've got Comedy Central, which is very, very strange. International viewers are pretty much out of luck, whatever they want to do and whatever they're planning. But yeah, South Park, season 27, coming this week potentially. And then finally, another series. This is a series that I actually watched with my family whilst it aired on ITV earlier this year. And that is Code of Silence. It's now coming to BritBox. And this follows Alison Brooks, played by Rose Aveling Ellis, who actually won Strictly Come Dancing, which is like the UK version's Dancing with the Stars. And fantastic actress. the interesting thing about the Strictly Come Dancing win is that she is deaf, and so at a complete disadvantage compared to other competitors. In this show, though, she plays a smart and determined deaf woman, having spent years working in a police canteen and secretly observing conversations. Her life then takes an unexpected turn when her exceptional lip-reading skills catch the attention of DS Ashley Francis and DI James Marsh as they recruit her for a covert operation. And, well, things spiral very, very quickly. She finds herself settling into a relationship and getting deeper into the criminal underworld. It's a fantastic series. Highly, highly recommend it, Devon.
Awesome. Well, that's a great suggestion, and one that definitely would have passed me by because I'm not currently subscribed to BritBox, but I've heard there's a lot of good stuff on there, and this is definitely one to add to the list as well. Is there anything coming out on Friday that we need to be looking out for?
Yeah, on Friday, number of films. Death of the Unicorn makes its way to HBO Max. The sequel to Happy Gilmore 2, is coming to Netflix, and of course sees the return of Adam Sandler in the titular role. And judging by the trailer, it's either going to be a great time or a wasted nostalgia trip. We'll have to wait and see. But hey, there's also a cameo from Ben Stiller. So there's that. And then lastly, The Phoenician Scheme makes its way to Peacock. It stars Benicio del Toro, Mia Frappleton, Michael Cera, Tom Hanks, Bryan Cranston, Riz Ahmed, Jeffrey Wright, Scarlett Johansson, Richard Ayoade, Rupert Friend, Hope Davis, and of course directed once again by the master, Wes Anderson, with this latest film following a wealthy businessman, Zaza Kador, who appoints his only daughter, a nun, as sole heir to his estate. So lots and lots to check out. Very, very different in terms of different style approaches. So something for everyone on this week's watch list. And I'd love to know from our listeners what worked for them through these recommendations and what didn't. I don't think, Devon, you're going to be going into shark-infested waters at any point, even though, you know, Shark Week has just been. So there is that.
Yeah, I'll stick with the Discovery Channel for that kind of stuff, Sigmund. Well, we always wrap up our episode with some up-next picks and recommendations for things people can watch. Sigmund, what have you got for us this week?
A documentary. This is Union. I actually highlighted this at the end of last year. Not as a TV app highlight, but as something I got to check out theatrically. It's now available in the TV app after, honestly, a year of being in limbo, you know, in terms of distribution and actually being able to find it. This is a documentary about one of the most powerful companies on the planet, Amazon, and a group of Amazon workers who embark on an unprecedented campaign to unionize their warehouse in Staten Island, New York. And this is a 2024 documentary that was impossible to find for quite some time, but is now available not only in the Apple TV app, but also Amazon Prime Video. Highly, highly recommend. It's a couple of hours, but really inspirational stuff, and a little bit politicky this week. So that's for the adults. I don't imagine this is something you'd want to watch as a family. So what have you got for us this week?
Well, I guess unless you're really trying to instill like labor principles into your kids and teach them to fight for their worth, I mean, sure. I guess at some point you probably need to have that conversation with them. But if they're on the little younger side, I've got a couple family picks for you this week. These are actually shows that are coming back after many years away. And so kind of a return almost to my childhood or many people's childhood and some nostalgia going on, which is great. First up is The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball, which is created by Ben Bucklett and produced by Hanna-Barbera Studios Europe. It ran on Cartoon Network from 2011 to 2019. So it's been off the air for 6 years now. This is a really interesting cartoon about a cat named Gumball, and my brothers loved this series growing up. The humor wasn't necessarily for me. It's very loud and kind of yelly, and it just didn't connect with me necessarily. But what I did love about it was the visual style and the animation, and the way that the series plays with textures, I think, is very cool. It's great that this one's coming back, and for those who want to watch it, it returns Monday on Hulu. That is The Wonderfully Weird World of Gumball. And then probably more relevant for my house right now, the age of my child, is the return of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse on Disney+, this time under the moniker Mickey Mouse Clubhouse Plus, because everything has to have a plus on it now, Sigmund. This show ran on Disney Junior from 2006 to 2016. It features Mickey and his friends going on various adventures, learning to use tools, and just learning lessons along the way. And Noah loves the original run of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse on Disney+, so seeing it redone in a modern style with, just new adventures back to the Clubhouse, I think it's going to be great. And new episodes of that are airing weekly on the Disney Channel and then next day on Disney+. So a couple of great returns for the family and some new things to stream for younger and older kids.
Yeah. +1 for the wonderfully weird world of Gumball. And much like yourself, I love the art style. It's very flat, very, I'd say, Steamboat Willie era animation to a point. And so, yeah, a nice way of tying the two together. Before we end this episode, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Simon, who got in touch, said that he really loved our lists and there's plenty for him to be catching up on, but he's desperate to watch The Pit. This was one that we highlighted. Still not available in a lot of regions outside of the US, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But yeah, he's trying to find ways of finally being able to check it out. So, of course, if we get any updates on that, we will get them to you. But yeah, thanks for the lovely feedback.
For sure. And if you have feedback you'd like to share with the show, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on social media via the links in the show notes or via our contact form, which is also linked in the show notes. That's all from us this week. But as always, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
We'll be back next week with a look back at Stick. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week. And we leave you with the words of the late Andrea Gibson. In any moment on any given day, I can measure my wellness by this question. Is my attention on loving, or is my attention on who isn't loving me?